find the page. Cadman's hymn. We went over, I was thinking about this over the weekend. Went over all the alliterative stuff, but didn't talk about the hymn itself at all for some reason. I have no idea why. Probably because my brain seems completely fried this semester. And because some of you have asked, when I have a quiz ready, I will send out an email announcing that, and it'll be announced also on the D2L page. I hope to today. I'm having, not with this one, with my home one problem after another with computers and internet. And my computer at home is regularly set to back up to my 10 terabyte hard drive, which it's been doing faithfully. And when I lost a bunch of files on my computer, my hard drive crashed. Less than a year, it won't even read it. Simultaneously, these things happen. And in my home modem also, Comcast modem, won't connect at all. Cadman's hymn, page 55. Now we ought to praise Leo's translation, Roy Leo's translation here. Now we ought to praise Heaven Kingdom's guardian, the Maker's might, and his mind's thoughts. The work of the glory Father, as he of each of wonders, the eternal Lord, established a beginning. Kind of give you a prose, So now we need to praise, or we ought to praise, the guardian of the heavenly kingdom. We ought to praise the Maker's might and his mind's thoughts. We ought to praise, notice I'm supplying that subject and verb for each of these following clauses. The work of the glory Father, as he, we don't have to praise the as he, but the work of the glory Father, and then we get the as he of each wonders, the eternal Lord established a beginning. Well, that was the work of the glory Father. Okay? The eternal Lord is restating glory Father, guardian, etc. Okay? So, what did he do? He first shaped for men's sons heaven as a roof. Go back to the book of Genesis, and what happens first? The firmament. All right? The Holy Creator. Then Middle Earth. Yeah, and that is where Tolkien gets the idea of Middle Earth from. Mankind's guardian, the eternal Lord. Afterwards prepared the earth for men, the Lord Almighty. Okay? What did the spirit, whatever, who visited Cadman, tell him to sing about? Creation. What does Cadman at least partially sing about? The Creator. Yes, he is speaking about creation, but you don't have creation without the Creator, without the thing that comes before the act of creating. Okay? All right, leave that aside. The Wanderer. Your textbook on 65 and 66 gives you a bit of an introduction to the Exeter book, or the Exeter book elegies, I should say, which are the Wanderer, the Seafarer. Okay. They don't occur in the same section. That is, there's not a section of the Exeter book that says elegies, and then you get this collection of poems. They're interspersed. A lot of people think, and they're often taught this way, and I often will do this, that Wanderer and the Seafarer are companion pieces. It's like one was composed and the other one was composed along similar lines, or kind of as a response almost to it. Okay? So we get the Wanderer first, at least in this book, and then the Seafarer. They have similar themes. For example, they both deal with the theme of exile. Okay? I can never spell this word. One M or two. They both deal with the theme of pilgrimage. All right? They both deal with the theme of death or loss. Or another way to put it, They are both laments. Why? Because that's what an elegy is. An elegy is lamenting something that has been lost. Okay? So if something is elegiac, it has that aspect to it. So, this begins, there's no known author. Almost all Old English poetry is anonymous. Okay? So we have no idea who first created these poems. We have no idea when these poems were originally composed. We do know that they survive in the Exeter book. It's the only place these poems survive. Okay? In the Exeter book dates from right around the year 1000 AD. In fact, your introduction to it tells us about Bishop Leverich and things like that. Sometime before his death, the book was given to the Cathedral Library at Exeter before Bishop Leverich's death in 1072. So we know it dates from at least before that date. The handwriting as such indicate it dates from 975 to sometime around, well, let's say 1072 at the very latest. Okay? And it's got a whole bunch of poems, just like an anthology. So it begins with in Liuza's translation. Roy Liuza is professor of Old English, University of Tennessee, Knoxville. He was at Tulane for a while. He was at University of Toronto, headed up their, I don't remember, Dictionary of Old English or something like that. Quite a few years. He's probably one of the top 5 or 10 Anglo-Saxonists in the world. Okay. His translation of the Old English poems is the one that if you're going to get a translation, get his. It's about the best there is. There are parts you're going to see in the first 5 lines where I'm going to really disagree with some of his translations. So, always the one alone longs for mercy, the Maker's mildness, though troubled in mind. Yep, that's right. That's not the word. That is. I knew there was something wrong there. Mildness. The Maker's mildness, though troubled in mind across the ocean ways, he has long been forced to stir with his hands the frost-cold sea and walk in exile's paths. Weird is fully fixed. Okay, so for just these 5 lines, I've given you the Old English according to one edition, John C. Pope / R.D. Folks revised edition of 8 Old English poems. The manuscript does not have these dashes between these compound words. I don't know why that's there, but I just copied it literally. So, the Old English. Oft him on haga ara yebideth, meh todas melza, thothahe mod carry, yon lagulada longa shorta, huran mit hondu, hrim kaldasai, lad and raklasas, weird bith full arad. So, oft him on haga. Often, the one alone or solitary one, however you want to put that into English words. If you get that idea of the person alone, the solitary one, you can phrase it a bunch of different ways. For himself, that is, he himself experiences, and the experiences translation comes from this word, which we're going to wait to. But he, favor, grace, gift, benefit. You could maybe even stretch it to say something like bounty. Yebideth. So the main verb comes at the end of the line. What's yebideth mean? Comes from the verb yebidon, which the infinitive would be to experience, to await, to expect, to endure. Notice that one verb has, at the very least, those 4 different meanings. So, the solitary one, for himself, often blank grace or favor. Often experiences grace or favor, often awaits grace or favor, often expects grace or favor, often endures grace or favor. How important is that word? Yebideth. It actually determines how you read the entire poem. How you translate that one word, okay, determines how you read the rest. Because let's say this isn't favor or grace. Let's put it in our world terms. And let's say you are the solitary one, and rather than grace or favor, let's say you all have a job, and let's replace it with a raise. Often you, for yourself, await a raise, experience a raise. What's the difference right there? If you've experienced it, you've gotten it. If you're awaiting it, hasn't come yet. Expects a raise, again, hasn't come yet. Endures, that's kind of makes it sound like the raise is bad. All right? So these haven't occurred. These have occurred. Go back to favor, grace, mercy. Often the solitary one by himself, or the solitary one experiences, awaits, expects, endures grace or favor or mercy. So if you endure a mercy, what does that say about the mercy? Or if you endure a grace, in the theological sense, a gift from God, what does that say about that gift? We feel like a burden? Yeah, because we kind of think gifts are all what? They're all good things to have. Depends on the kind of gift, right? Tolkien, in his Silmarillion, the background stuff for the Lord of the Rings, talks about death as being the particular gift by Eru Ilúvatar to men because of what happens to them at death. In his essay on fairy stories, Tolkien refers to George MacDonald and says, MacDonald was the author who particularly dealt with the idea of the good death, the euthanatos, all right? A mercy or grace or favor that must be endured. Can be all kinds of things depending upon one's perspective. So, the metodos milza. See, this is standing as an appositive or is standing as rephrasing this. Okay? Although he, that's this guy, weary in mind. He's tired. He's beat down. He's fed up. He's had enough. Although he what? Throughout the sea paths, long has had to row with his hands. Why does it mean row with his hands? Does that mean he has his hands on the oars? No. It means he's in like a kayak almost. And he's doing this on either side of the boat. In the ice-cold sea. To do what? To walk or tread, or literally it's where we get the verb to wade, as in to wade through water, like we'll probably be doing tomorrow. What? In the exile treks. Notice we're being told this person, this solitary person, is an exile. He's walking in the tracks, the lasts of this word means exile. It's the word from which we get modern English, wretched. So if you ever feel particularly wretched, that means you're feeling alone and outcast from everybody else. Like nobody understands you, nobody gets the problems you're going through, etc., etc. Okay? Weird is fully fixed. How do you define weird? Is it fate? There's a line in Mel Brooks' Young Frankenstein where Gene Wilder's character yells out, "Destiny, destiny, there's no escaping destiny." Okay? In ancient Greek drama, yep, try as hard as you may to escape fate, what do you end up doing? You create it. That's the thing about fate. It cannot be outrun. Okay? So, this isn't quite fate, though. It's Germanic weird. It's close to fate. It's kind of what will be, will be. All right? Is fully fixed. The rad here, that's that word that we talked about the other day, advised, counseled. Fully advised, fully counseled mean considered, thought about, discussed, done. This is what's going to happen. All right? So, with that opening, what's that telling you about what's going to follow? Are we in for a good ride? Is this going to be cheery and light and fluffy? Is this going to be, oh, just trust in, pick your God, and everything will work out just peachy keen? No. Thus spoke the wanderer, mindful of troubles. Now, the mindful of troubles, Ervotha Yamindi. Yamindi means remembering, memorializing. He's thinking of the Ervotha, the troubles, of cruel slaughters and dear kinsman's downfall. See, the cruel slaughters and dear kinsman's downfall, that's filling out his troubles. So his troubles are probably not like our troubles. His troubles are much, much greater than my silly, stupid little computer problems. He's thinking of the cruel slaughters and dead kinsmen. Now, thus spoke. What's the thus spoke refer to? Does it refer to the lines that come before? Or does it refer to the lines that come after that begin with a quotation mark? See, the Old English manuscript doesn't have quotation marks. Those aren't invented until, 1500s or so. All right? Are those first 5 lines kind of a preamble, a prologue, a preface? So, thus spoke. Often alone in the first light of dawn, I have sung my, and there's the word, lament. There is none living to whom I would dare to reveal clearly my heart's thoughts. So, what's he just told her? Why are there none living to whom he would reveal his heart's thoughts? Is it because they're all dead, the slaughter of kinsmen? Or is it just because his thoughts are so dark he doesn't think he can reveal them? I know it is true that it is a nobleman's lordly nature to closely bind his spirit's coffer. His spirit's coffer. Why Liuza does that and doesn't translate, okay, put the words into words we would understand easily. I don't understand. Because the Old English, there is hoard coven. Okay? Coven, coffer, hoard, heart, or could be soul or mind, etc., etc. Okay? In other words, he just literally puts it in English. But what does it mean? What's the spirit's coffer? It's this. It's your chest. It's where you bind up all of your innermost thoughts and such. We refer to it as the heart. Okay? Not the boom, 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 boom heart, but. So, I know it's true, it is a nobleman's lordly nature to closely bind his spirit's coffer, to hold fast his treasure hoard, whatever he may think. So he's telling us, a good nobleman doesn't go on Oprah or Jerry Springer, pick your daytime confessional talk show host. A good nobleman does what? Keeps his mouth shut. Doesn't tell anybody about what he's thinking. Notice it's whatever he may think. The weary mind cannot withstand weird. Okay? And the word withstand there shows us the original meaning of the word with, W-I, what's called an ev or thorn, depending upon the letter shape. We tend to think with means what? I'm going to a movie with so-and-so. Means together, right? The person's walking alongside, etc., etc. With, in Old English, means opposed to, against. It gets replaced by Latin contra, against, or anti, against. Okay? So the weary mind cannot against stand weird. The weary mind cannot oppose this. But what is this really, this weird idea? We have an idea in modern English that kind of appropriates or matches it. And if you're, in the Christian tradition, if you're a Calvinist, this would be you. Used to be Calvinist, not anymore. The idea of predestination. Everything's already ordained. Right, that's another word, ordained. It's already fixed, all right? He says the weary mind cannot withstand weird. Or that other thing I put down, the way things are, what will be, will be. Can the unweary mind? A little better. But the weary mind is what? What's it mean to be weary? Tired, exhausted, worn out, can't put up any more fight. It cannot withstand weird. The troubled heart can offer no help. The troubled heart. Why can't the troubled heart offer any help? It's already troubled. That is, the individual can't look inward because there's just kind of like death and darkness there. All right? And so, those eager for fame often bind fast in their breast coffers, the heart, a sorrowing soul. Notice the idea he's just now introduced. These kind of go together. Fame or glory. Why? Because Anglo-Saxon culture was built on the idea, or at least heavily influenced, the idea of personal glory. Personal glory is how you live on. Because you die. But your glory can go on. I mean, we're still reading about Beowulf. We're still talking about King Arthur. We still read about Achilles. All these quote-unquote great heroes of old. Why? Because their fame lives on. So, if you're eager for fame, bind fast in your heart the sorrowing soul. You know, the proverbial British stiff upper lip. You grit your teeth and you slog on. Just as I have had to take my own heart, often wretched, cut off from my own homeland, there's the exile, far from dear kinsmen, and bind it in fetters, iron bands. Ever since long ago, I hid my gold-giving friend. Gold-giving friend. Goldwine is the Old English word. Gold, hyphen if you want, W-I-N-E. It's not wine, it's wine. It means friend. Does that translation make clear what that phrase refers to? It's his Lord. It's his Lord. Not religious, his political Lord. All right? In the darkness of earth and went wretched, winter sad. The sentence never ends. It doesn't end until we get to line 29. So, why is he so sad? He said to leave his homeland, so he's on an exile. He suffered death and loss, his kinsmen, and his Lord. In fact, he had to bury his Lord to hide him in the darkness of the earth. All right? And went wretched. Okay, keep in mind, what does that mean? That means exile. So I went wretchedly as an exile. It's got both meanings. Winter sad, it's middle of winter and it's cold. We're talking either the North Sea off the northeast coast of England or the Irish Sea between England and Ireland. Either way, middle of winter is cold. Over the ice-locked waves, sought, hall-sick, that is, sick for a hall. He needs a hall, a building. But he doesn't need just any hall or any building. He needs, I'm going to take this off now. He needs the hall. The hall is the center of Germanic tribal society. It's where the Lord, one's king, C-Y-N-G, modern English K-I-N-G, where one's king or king rules, where one's chieftain rules. And that hall, imagine it, like this, you're looking down, that king sits in the middle and everybody else around him. It's from that position that what's called Giftstuhl or Yiftstuhl, throne, gift stool, it's from that position that the king dispenses judgment. People come before him, they've got a quarrel, they tell their sides, he just determines who wins, who loses, who's right, who's wrong, etc. It's where he dispenses treasure. When his thanes, his warriors, come back from battle, they give everything they've gotten to him. Okay? And then this is the reciprocal part of that relationship. So they fight for him, and in return, the good king dispenses treasure to them. That's their payment, so to speak. So notice there's two aspects to that relationship. They fight on behalf of him, and he rewards them with treasure from the spoils of war. Okay? If the king doesn't do that, he's a bad king. And we're going to see examples of bad kings. So, the hall is the locus, the center of Germanic society. It is everything. And kind of like Athens was to Socrates, one of the reasons Socrates drank the hemlock and didn't leave Athens, because he said there's nothing outside of Athens. Athens is everything. Athens was his identity. All right? Similarly, if you lose your hall, if your hall is destroyed, you become kind of persona non grata. You become a person without grace. You become somebody without a homeland. I don't mean, a migrant. I mean, there's no place to go back to, even if you wanted to. All right? So, hall sick, that is, I need a hall, because without the hall, you didn't have an identity per se. I saw it over the ice-locked waves, a hall sick, a treasure giver, that is, a new king, a new lord. wherever I might find, far or near, someone in a meat hall who might know my people. I'm looking for a Lord who might have heard of whatever his kin group is. The Shermans, kind of a thing. Who might know my people, or maybe he wouldn't know my people. Who would want to comfort me. That is, bring me frovra, solace. Me, friendless, accustom me to joy. Now, the word friend doesn't only have our modern connotation. It does partially. But friend also can imply that one in authority I look up to or I'm connected to, or that defends and protects me. So when he says friendless, he can't bring anything to this relationship, so to speak. He doesn't bring any kind of power to it. He's saying, I am totally powerless. And maybe someone will want to accustom me, a nobody, to joy. How do you accustom somebody to joy? You make it joyful where they are. You bring them into a place of joy, so to speak. Right? You make it so that day after day after day, joy is all they experience. For what purpose? To beat down the memories of the bad. Right? He who has come to know how cruel a companion is sorrow for one with dear friends will understand. And that kind of begins, actually it might have been earlier. Yeah, you could say that the opening 5 lines are one of these. That kind of begins, I can get rid of this. One of the first gnomic passages. A gnome is not one of those little plastic things that people put in their gardens. Gnome. A gnome is a piece of wisdom. A gnomic passage is a wisdom or proverb passage. They often begin with something like, he who has come to know. Okay. I think it could be argued the first 5 lines are a gnomic passage. They're designed to teach wisdom. Okay? They're proverbial in that sense. He who has come to know how cruel a companion is sorrow, for one with dear friends, will understand. That is, if you walked in my, I think that word I had up here, raklastas, paths of exile, you would understand. Kind of implies if you haven't, you won't as easily. What will he understand? The path of exile claims him. Notice the one who has experienced this is claimed, is owned, is possessed by the path of exile. That person is not the agent of the exile, it's the recipient. He doesn't have any other way to walk. I never made this connection before, I should have. There's a passage in Tolkien's Lord of the Rings, my class before this is partially at least Lord of the Rings class. There's a part in it where Frodo and Sam are talking with kind of Gollum, they're on their way, and Frodo asks how their path is laid. And then later on they talk, and they talk about, so is my path laid. Well, what does that imply? He can't veer either way. Whatever way he goes, that is the path. And it is determined. So, the path of exile claims him, not patterned gold. Remember that Sutton Hoo belt buckle I opened the book and showed the picture of? That's patterned gold. Or gold rings bracelets worn around the wrist or rings around the finger or armlets worn around the upper arm or even golden torques worn around the neck. He says the path of exile claims him, not gold. And it's patterned gold, meaning it is humanly worked gold. Not just, gold ore you find in the ground. A winter-bound spirit, not the wealth of earth. See, path of exile equates to winter-bound spirit. Patterned gold equates to the wealth of the earth. If you've experienced this, you will understand. In other words, he who has ears to hear, let him hear. He's saying, what claims him? The path of exile and his winter-bound spirit. He's saying, I'm not going to find peace in this hall or an earthly hall. He remembers hall holders, that is, the people who inhabit the hall, and treasure taking, the king giving out treasure. How in his youth his gold-giving Lord accustomed him to the feast. That joy has all faded. Yeah, I remember those good days. But that has all faded. What's the difference between faded and gone away? Faded and is no more.
Faded is more over time.
Faded is over time. You buy a brand new shirt, brand new pair of pants, something, and assuming it's whatever, has bright colors or something, what happens to that thing over 10 years, 5 years? Those colors fade. Are they still there? Yes, they are. They cannot be seen as well. They cannot be experienced as well. They cannot be enjoyed as well. And as time goes on, they fade and fade and fade. Notice what's not replacing them. New bright colors. It's like, yeah, I remember those good days. Way back then. And he who has long been forced to forego his Lord's beloved words of counsel will understand. Another gnomic passage. If you have been in a place where you don't have a wise Lord to give you counsel, you will also understand. And here's what you'll understand. When sorrow and sleep both together often bind up the wretched exile. It seems so. When these things happen, then in the exile's mind, it seems that he clasps and kisses his Lord of men, and on his knee lays hands in head, as he sometimes long ago in earlier days enjoyed the gift throne. What? Notice, when sorrow and sleep both together bind up the wretched exile. So he goes to sleep full of what? Sorrow, sadness. And what happens in his sleep? He dreams. He remembers. He has visions of what? Of when he remembered clasping the knees of his Lord of men and lays his hand and head. In earlier days, enjoyed the gift throne. By the way, those are all signs of supplication, seeking mercy and grace. All right? But when the friendless man awakens again, and those are supposed to be joyful images, because he's right there. He's at the throne. His Lord is right there. But when he wakes again and sees before him the fallow waves, seabirds bathing, spreading their feathers, frost falling and snow mingled with hail, then the heart's wounds are that much heavier, longing for his loved one. See, now he mentions the seabirds here. When we get to the seafarer is kind of going to hallucinate about the birds and is going to think the birds are his friends. Sorrow is renewed. Actually, take that back. It's the Wanderer. Sorry, I've not taught this in a few years. Sorrow is renewed when the memory of kinsmen flies through the mind. Notice that. He thinks of his kinsmen, and the sorrow comes back. He greets them with great joy, greedily surveys hall companions. They always swim away. His hall companions swim away. The floating spirits bring too few familiar voices. See, he's looking at the birds, and the birds do what? They kind of transform into his friends. He's seeing the birds, but up here, he's seeing his friends. And the friends, too soon, swim away. How do we know the friends aren't really his friends? Because they bring too few familiar voices. Familiar meaning recognizable, understandable. Because what kind of voices do they bring? Seabird sounds. Cares are renewed. See, when he sees those birds as his friends, it's like a little bit of the weight is lifted. And then he sees their birds. And the weight is almost like doubled, right? Because what is he immediately aware of? They're not my friends. Ooh, I'm really bad off when I think birds are my friends. I mean, not, just nature friends, but Fred, Tom, Jerry, For one who must send over and over a weary heart across the binding waves. And you've got a gloss down at the bottom. This is an almost hallucinatory scene. And it's not exactly clear. I just gave you kind of one translation or one interpretation that the birds are he sees the birds as his hall friends. Okay? And so I cannot imagine for all this world, why my spirit should not grow dark. When I think through all this life of men, how suddenly they gave up the hall floor, mighty young retainers. So, I cannot imagine how for all the world my spirit should not grow dark. Put that in modern English. What's he mean? October 1983, Sunday morning. Like the 13th or 23rd. I was at church with my girlfriend at the time, who we then broke up and got back together and married her, and her roommate. And I just heard on the radio that morning about the U.S. Marine Barracks Embassy bombing in Beirut, Lebanon. 240 some Marines killed from a big old truck bomb. And I was not in a good mood. I was in a foul mood, okay? And my now wife's roommate said something to me, and it'll stick with me till I'm dead. And it was something about, yeah, but Jesus is still there, and he still loves them, and there's, you should feel joy. And I'm like, 240 Marines and their families, 240 plus Marines just died, and that affected more than just 240 other people, right? Probably affected another 1,000 people, tens of thousands possibly, including friends, etc., etc. Don't talk to me about joy, okay? Listen to what he says. I can't imagine how for all this world my spirit should not grow dark. I shouldn't get a pretty dark, pessimistic view on life when I think through all this life of men. All this life of men means right now, the time I'm alive, as well as from the earliest of humanity to now. How suddenly they gave up, again, stupid translation, my opinion, how they gave up the hall floor. The Old English word there is flat. I'm 99% sure. I could look it up because I've got the book. This hall floor, the hall floor, mighty young retainers. Well, yes, it literally does mean hall floor. What does it metaphorically mean? The floor of this world, the floor of our existence. To give up the hall floor means die. When I think through all this life of men, how suddenly they, men, died. The mighty, notice, young retainers. If you paid attention at all to the news over the weekend, and the 13 servicemen and women who died over the weekend, the oldest one was 23. I think the youngest was 19. Young. Okay? There's a passage in the Lord of the Rings where one of the characters says, the young die early and the old lie withering. They just kind of keep on going. Thus this middle earth droops and decays every single day. What does that mean? Every single day tells us what? It's more droopy today than it was yesterday. What's that say about tomorrow? It will be droopier still. And so a man cannot become wise before he has weathered his share of winters in this world. You can't become wise until you've grown old in this world. That means you have to yabideth, right? Await, experience, endure, expect. All the crap that this world has to throw at us. He's implying those mighty young retainers, they didn't gain wisdom because they didn't live long enough. A wise man, big, major, massive, flashing red neon lights, gnomic passage. A wise man must be patient. What does the word patient mean? Literally. It has multiple meanings. What's one meaning of it? Wait. Okay. So, patient. To wait. It says must be patient, right? So to be patient means to wait. What else does it mean?
Still.
To be still? What else? What if I threw a little article there? Be a patient. Notice it changes it from a verb to a noun. What's the noun mean? What do you have in hospitals? Patients. Why are they there? Louder? To be healed. Implying what about them? They're sick. And when you're waiting to be healed, you're there to be healed. Partially you're waiting, but what else? You're enduring that sickness. You probably can't notice, I brought him to work because I was going to go work out afterwards. And I just decided, so I put on these massive knee braces I have because my knees are shot to hell. And every day after class, just like somebody drilling into them. It means to suffer. To be patient means to suffer, right? There are so-called passion plays. They get performed in Germany every summer. Well, they're the plays dealing with the last week of Christ's life, right? And that event, that whole event, is called the Passion. It's the suffering. So, a wise man must be patient. He's got to wait. He's got to be still. He's got to... And so if you're experiencing suffering, you have to do what? Endure it. He must endure. neither too hot-hearted, nor too hasty with words. Too hot-hearted. Too eager to jump the gun. Too hasty with words. I don't care your political context, you'd probably be surprised at mine. President Trump. Something says something bad. You know, he's on Twitter 2 seconds later. All throughout the day. All right? That was one of the things that did him in, partially at least. Okay? So, nor too weak in war. Notice, too weak. Kind of implying it's okay to be weak in war, like if it's all you can do, but run away, you know, throw up and surrender, that's being too weak. Nor too unwise in thoughts. It's okay to admit you're not the brightest person in the room. Right? That's okay. Neither fretting, nor fawning, nor greedy for wealth. Fretting. What happens if somebody takes my money? What happens if somebody breaks in and steals my gold? Fretting, worrying over it. Or, I don't have enough. How am I going to live tomorrow? Okay? That's fretting. Fawning. You know, Tolkien's Lord of the Rings. Yes, precious. It's, you know, that kind of thing. Nor greedy. Yes, I have enough. But my name's Jeff Bezos, and I want more. You know, I'm not going to take over all the shopping and stuff. I'm moving into healthcare now, and pretty soon all your healthcare is going to be at the local Amazon clinic. He started a pharmacy, if you're not familiar. But he still can't beat Elon Musk in space, and it's just driving him crazy, which is why he's filing all these lawsuits to try to get SpaceX stopped. Anyways, nor too greedy for wealth, never eager for boasting before he truly understands. Truly understands what? It's dealt with later. What he's really boasting about. What does every, doesn't matter the party, every presidential candidate promise? It can be specific or it can be general. What do they promise you? Elect me and what? Things will get better. Your life will improve. Back in the 1950s, it was said, you know, 2 chickens every pot and a car in the garage, etc. Now it's, I don't know, broadband free, you know, blah, blah, blah. Okay? Elect me and I will improve everything. And then what happens when said person gets elected?
They don't do it.
Well, I didn't realize things were this bad. Nobody told me. And what happens to all those promises? We're going to scale them way back. Okay? That's what comes after the boasting. Until the brave spirit understands truly where the thoughts of his heart will turn. See, that's where talking about the budget deficit doesn't really work. That's where you got to talk about fighting a Grendel, fighting a monster. Because you have all kinds of examples in literature and film where so-and-so says, elect me and I'll go out and, you know, do X, Y, and Z. And that person gets elected / chosen, and then they realize the enormity of the monster and they don't do it. Okay? So you got to understand what your heart is going to do when you actually are face to face with the situation. You know, that might be, yeah, we'll stop there because that's a good breaking point. Okay, like I think I said before class, I'm going to try to get a quiz up. Nope, not going to work. Today. If I do, You will get an email about it, and it will be posted on D2L. You'll have at least a couple of days, and I know tomorrow the weather's probably going to be screwy. So probably make it at least 2 or 3 days. I may send out another one of those emails also about attendance, just reply. I think I said to reply by midnight. Originally it was midnight yesterday, and I said midnight tonight. Send me that email via